I'll do a little intro. Okay, so this is where I have to get all professional now. Now
Yeah.
we're recording. So, firstly, I would like to welcome you on Red Room Sessions #3. So, it's my third episode. And you're the first person actually I'm interviewing that I don't really know in a personal space.
Right, there you go.
Yeah, yeah. So you're actually the only, like, the first client that I've met through my Red Room Reiki and reading space. And I think today's podcast slash like interview slash conversation is really, really important.
Mhm.
I have a son about the same age as you as well. So what we're talking about today has been highlighted in my life for a long time, particularly going through years with a teenage son, particularly about 13, 14, 15, when that testosterone kicks in.
Of course, wild time, man.
Yeah, well, and I remember there was this young boy. He used to come into Red Hot Music where I used to work, and he was all of 17, but was so wise. And he's and I remember this day I was crying. I was like, I just don't know what to do with my son. And he goes, "We all go through it. He'll come. He'll come back to you." And it was the best advice that anyone could have given me because it gave me hope.
That's it. That's it. Yeah, she's a crazy time in and around that age, but you just got to let them go off on their own, and they more or less find themselves again after a few years. But it's a funny time anyway.
Yeah, it is a funny time. So I wasn't quite sure how to introduce what you do. So I thought I would just let you introduce yourself.
Sure, sure. Thanks. So, yeah, I guess you'd say by trade or day to day, I'm a personal trainer. That in itself is quite a broad banner. To give a bit of context and into the past, I've been in the industry for about 8 years now, I think. So, there's been a lot of different roles within that, and over those 8 years, so that's been a variety of one-to-one personal training and group training. It's been different management roles in different facilities and supervision and everything. So, yeah, sort of ticked every box there is in the gym space and stuff. Anyway. But I would say day to day to put a title to it. Yeah, to just be personal trainer would probably be the way to go.
Yeah. Well, I was kind of putting down coach.
Yeah, 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 yeah. A little bit
Uh,
more of a holistic approach that one. So,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. A lot of people out there use that term. So that's probably the way to look at it because yeah, it's a little bit more than just counting reps and telling them they're doing a good job. As you and I have spoken about before many a times throughout sessions. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I mean, the irony is you're the person I've tried to avoid my entire life.
You'd be surprised. You're not in the same boat. Many people say the same sort of stuff like
Yeah.
that.
And
But
as you know, if you've watched the last two episodes that I've done, I like to do a quick numerology on my clients and
yeah.
my interviewers. Um, and I love it because you're a 2000 baby.
Love
And
you, baby.
yeah, so you're like at the birth of like the 200s, like the 2000s, I should say,
Yep.
where you're like, if you look at the 1900 babies, like I am, we've got a lot of ones and a lot of nines, new beginnings, endings, but the two era of 2000, 2001, 2002, 2026 is that you're meant to be someone here for connection.
Yep.
And today, I think the word I think we'll be using the most will be connection and how important connection is. And it's also a number 2 year for you this year. So a personal year number 2, which is about connection. And congratulations on your wedding.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. You were spot on. It was a ripper day. Sun was out. Weather was perfect. So the universe certainly turned one on for us that day. So
Oh, I love that. And of course, the wedding day is really just the celebration. It's the marriage that's the most important.
exactly, exactly. No, it was awesome. We had yeah the best people there. It was just one big party in the end. So for Chelsea and I, we really couldn't ask for too much more. It was a wicked day and just filled with a lot of fun. So
Now, I know this is a very personal question, but was there any fights at the wedding? Because in the old days, in the 80s, it wasn't a wedding unless there was a fight.
yeah, I did hear that on the grapevine when I got talking to my grandfather. Yeah, he's got a few interesting stories from way back when, but No, far from it. Everyone was just having a blast, and yeah, probably the only thing they were fighting over was what type of alcohol we were running out of, and who was going to finish first. But nah, all in all, yeah, wicked, no
It was
problem.
brilliant. And getting back to the 2000s, you've got 3 zeros in your birthday, and zero, it's somebody who's very spiritual. The more zeros, the more spiritual you are. But it also means more of the creator as well, because you're starting from naught.
Sure.
And so, therefore, you're here to manifest most of your life, which is amazing. And what you've already come towards is like that realization that spirituality is really important to you, and that you can see that it needs to be important as well as a holistic approach to health and well-being.
Yeah.
And also, I love it because you've got the arrow of what we call the passivity. So arrow of passivity. It basically means, and I disagree with the books in numerology, it says it's somebody who is disorderly, somebody who will never achieve a lot. And I have never met anyone who's got the arrow of passivity who's like that. I think numerologists need to go back and check that section because it's not true. What I do find is true with it is that you're lovers, not haters.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. Yeah.
And I definitely would put you under the umbrella of one of the nicest guys around.
I'll take that. I'll take that.
Yeah, yeah. And you know how they always say that, oh, the nice guy always ends last, right? Well, you're proof that that's actually not true.
Yeah, I think that old saying's dying a slow death, and I think we see that more and more nowadays, which is a good thing.
It is absolutely a good thing. So let's get into it today. Now, it's a touchy subject because there's a lot of stuff going on at the moment, particularly trending on social media about the loneliness epidemic, about young men moving towards the manosphere stuff. But I really wanted to get your view on how you've come across the idea, or you feel so strongly about the idea that spirituality needs to be incorporated in health and well-being.
Yeah, of course. So there's so many different avenues I could take with this conversation and could go for hours and hours. I guess to keep it short, I've spent quite a long time in the gym, Monday to Friday, 8 to 10 hours a day. You meet a lot of people, you talk to a lot of different people, you see a lot of different personalities, etc., etc. Um, it was great that we were working on their health and fitness. They were getting stronger, they were getting fitter, their risk of disease was going down, they were more confident. But largely with a lot of clientele over the years, and I would say I'm probably a little bit more intuitive than some individuals, for good or bad, who knows. But there was always this missing piece. There was probably something that they were still missing. They were still felt like they were lacking. And that was probably me for a long time as well, until I sort of started to, I suppose, open up, number one, myself, and then kind of discover the world of spirituality, if you want to call it that. Number two, we can get in this mode of, the hustle and grind culture, and sort of spirituality or our emotional health, things of that nature, can just get, sort of pushed to the side. And it's not until quite a while down the track that we sort of probably realize the effects. But the big thing was that, even people who had hit their health and fitness goals, yes, they were happy with that, but there was still more that they wanted out of it, if that makes sense, or still more that they kind of wanted in life. There was that little missing piece, and it's been really interesting talking to individuals, and sort of as I sort of discovered spirituality and learnt and grew and sort of opened myself up to it as well, and then started having conversations with clients about it as well, and they're on their own journey and stuff too. This holistic approach seems to give them a lot more fulfillment throughout, every area of their life. So compared to when I first started, health and fitness was, the only road. Now I see it as one of many, but it's not just, spirituality. There's so many different factors to life. It's, the relationships in our life. It's, things like financial health. Like it's a It's a big one, and there's so much to it. And just spending time with so many different individuals, you sort of start to unpack all these different things. A lot of people, I would probably say as well, they sort of, and men for that fact, they struggle to go to, let's just say a therapist or someone like that and sit there and talk about their feelings. It's kind of like we've got this activity in the middle, I'm the trainer, they're the client, got this activity, and it sort of it allows them to eventually build into a conversation. So a lot of the time I say to people, realistically, you're not a PT, you're more like a counselor, which is what it's like. So yeah, no, I know that's a bit of a broad answer, but hopefully that provides a little bit of context to your question. Yeah.
And I think it's so important. And look, 12 years ago, I started doing Reiki. And then 9 years ago, my business came about. And I remember when I first started, it was only women.
Yeah.
I never had men clients. It was very rare. And unfortunately, when I started Reiki, there was a lot of sexualization of men approaching me thinking it was something a lot different.
Yeah.
But now I have at least maybe 80-20. So 20% now are men, and not spiritually, what you say, spiritually inclined types of men. It's tradies.
Yep.
It's really blokey blokes coming. I remember when I was in, I was going to say Winton, but it wasn't. It was Blackwater in Queensland. And that's a mining town. And I worked nonstop for 2 days. I think I did like 17 clients, and the majority were men.
Yeah, wow.
And I remember one big brawly man came in, and I thought, oh, he looks terrifying. And he was crying and weeping within like 2 minutes,
Of course.
just wanting that connection with somebody.
Yeah.
And I mean, for people out there who don't know what spirituality is, it really has changed. The word spirituality, we kind of use it now to encompass lots of different things.
Sure.
But originally it just came from the idea that, spirits could come back down after they died and connected with us. So it was a belief in spirit. But 200 years later now, it's more about connecting to our higher self, a higher divine. It doesn't matter if it's God related, goddess related, whoever, like I say, floats your boat. My daughter says thin air. She calls it thin air. Like my son, he really struggles with any idea, but he's really fascinated with it all.
Yeah.
But within I think mainstream now, yoga and meditation are becoming very well known. Do you think that that's important? Do you use that?
Yeah, absolutely. That last little bit that you touched on as well, the yoga, things like Pilates and stuff becoming much more mainstream. We all spend our days on these things here, don't we? And whatever's sort of front of mind probably becomes more of a conversation between individuals and whatnot as well. So look, it's slowly crept into day-to-day life, and no longer are people just looking at the gym as the be all and end all. It's one part of many different things that encompass health and fitness and spirituality. I know it's a broad term, but that's one of those areas as well. So it's great that like I say, it's started to become a little bit more mainstream.
So within your own kind of coaching space, are you bringing that in as well? Are you using, say, meditation or maybe even mindfulness? Because I know a lot of men, they're going to the gym for mental health.
100%.
Mm.
Yeah, look, there's what I'd say, it depends on the individual. No two clients are the same, and they can be so different. So what I guess modality that you use with that individual is very unique in itself. What I would say for a lot of people, and it depends how far along they are on their journey, whether they're open to it, whether they're not, whether they're just starting to explore it, whether they've been going down that road for 10 years. The conversations and like I say, the modalities and stuff that we discuss or we use vary from client to client. But I think things like mindfulness and again, that's also quite a broad banner. Like I just touched on before, are becoming a little bit more mainstream. So people are becoming a bit more aware of it. I think that's step one. And as part of a PT, I think it's our responsibility to make sure that we're encompassing, all these different areas as well. But look, in regards to sort of how I provide my service, yes, they are things that we touch on. I probably don't go as far as prescribing that to the individual, but it is something that we discuss and we talk about. And I'd say, well, you're doing really well here. But you still say you're struggling with X, Y, and Z. Why don't you go and look at this or look at that? So yeah, those conversations are front of mind all the time and nearly every session. And clients, going off to a particular individual or particular profession or professional, are coming back with, sort of, quite positive from that experience. Yeah.
Mm. And do you find with your clientele, you're working with both females and males,
Correct.
and do they go to you for different reasons?
They they do. So very early on, and it's quite, I would say, probably subconscious to the client, to the individual initially. They will only discuss the health and fitness goals that they have. But 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sessions, 10, 15 sessions, whatever it is, eventually that wall starts to break down a little bit. And, they start to discuss the benefits of, oh, this is having a great benefit on my mental health. And then they sort of start to explain the reasons why. And you will get the odd individual who's what I would consider a little bit more extroverted, a little bit more sort of naturally open. They'll say like, look, I want this to, my mental health is my priority here. I understand the benefits of exercise associated with that, but largely people will give you the very stereotypical, I want to lose 5 kilos and look a little bit better. I want to lose 10 kilos and tone up, but you start to unpack when you build that relationship with the individual, just what their goals are. So it's not, and I'm sure it's the same in when you've got clients as well, Joe, that the first session there's probably that little bit of a barrier, but 3, 4 sessions in, it's like they'll tell you anything. So and they really start to open up. So yes, that's one of the areas that people like to focus on, or they'll explain that it is of benefit. But that's one of many. Yeah.
And what started your journey with sport?
With sport,
Yeah, with sport, because I'm assuming that came first before the gym.
it did, yeah, yeah, yeah. So, just a sporty family, really. Like our family, we were in and amongst footy clubs all my life and stuff like that too. So it was a very sort of Australian upbringing. It was footy in the winter and cricket in the summer. And yeah, I had two older brothers, so they were doing it. So I just sort of followed suit. And then one thing to the next, you want to improve your performance a little bit on game day. So then you find the gym, so on and so forth. So yeah, I was probably just blindly led into it, but yeah.
So it was culturally your space. I
Was
actually,
yeah.
I actually find footballers speak really well because you didn't hesitate when I asked you to do this.
Yeah, 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 yes and no. Yeah, there's your higher levels of football, and then there's more of your country footy. I think there's what we're talking about today. There's a big gap in some of this stuff between those two. Um, but yeah, a lot of footballers, and I think it sort of starts from the top. You see AFL players, previously they were sort of just known for AFL. So many AFL players these days, especially going off and doing amazing things. Those guys in particular, you touched on a little while before, are bringing mindfulness into their, pre-game approaches and stuff like that. And all that's been documented for people to see online and social media and stuff too. So I do think it starts from the top, and there's probably a lot of young men that idolize. Well, there is a lot of young men and a lot of young women that idolize these individuals. So if they can see that consistently, I think it starts to open up that awareness a little bit too.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, and for sure, so say boys who don't have, say, father figures, or they don't have anyone to really coach them about what it is to be masculine. Because the identity now, I mean, as a historian, I had a little look back and I wrote a few notes just to remind myself, because we tend to think that what people are saying to us now about traditional roles was always the case.
Yep.
And it hasn't. Its identity is fluid. So where we say now, the men are falling far, far behind and the women are progressing, it just depends on how you look at that. But I remember back at school, and I'm turning 50 this year. I've only got a couple of months left till I'm 50. When we were back at school, they were already in high school talking about how boys were falling so far behind in education.
Yeah.
They're saying that schools were designed for the female brain.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of saying that women were quite smart at the time, they just said we were docile.
Yeah.
It's like, it wasn't because we actually are studious or
Yep.
intelligent. It was because we're docile and we sit there and we do as we're told. And the boys will be boys. They'll be hanging off the ceilings and they'll be disruptive. So for that stage, but if you look back, women weren't even allowed in education a few years, like up 200 years ago. It was, you were just to be pretty, and the men. But even beforehand, there was a thing in, say, in ancient times, masculinity was about strength, say in Greece. It was about initiation in a lot of in the beginning of cultural times. It was you went out, you took your boys out into the forest, and they had to prove their bravery, and then they had initiation rites, and there was a section, I always think about how gorgeous it would have been if at the time when my son was struggling, that these men had come and taken him into the forest and like allowed him to feel all those emotions and new hormones, because even though his dad was very present, we're not in that culture anymore to do that. And I think this is where maybe sports is sort of like the new age initiation space.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I can only speak from experience from footy, but it's very much a case of you got to go head over the ball, and you're not sure the outcome of that and stuff like that. Look, I think it's evolving. It's a change. It's changing so rapidly. I think we're starting to see that balance of the masculine and the feminine, which I think is good, because I think for a long time, the pendulum swung one way. But I think. I think inherently men and women are different, and I think we've talked about this in sessions previously and stuff like that too. But yeah, there's that masculinity side, but I think it's sort of and when we even talk about the femininity or the feminine side, men sort of they sort of take a step back, like, what are you talking about? But I think it's very important. It's sort of that yin and yang, find that little bit of balance, if that makes sense. So I think that's what most men are searching for, from the conversations that I've had, at least, anyway.
Yeah, and for a lot of people, I mean, for young men particularly, I was looking at the suicide, and it's very morbid, but I was looking at the suicide statistics in Australia and it's alarming. It's 3 out of 4 suicides are men between the ages of 25 and 44.
Yeah.
And I was horrified. I thought, wow, this is a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. It's pretty scary. Earlier this year, there was a local event on it. It was called Walk for a Bloke. And I'm not sure if you heard of it. I think it's sort of a bit more of a new initiative. So effectively, it's a bunch of men that come together and do a 25-kilometer walk. And the guys that were leading it, we sort of stop every I think it was 7 to 10 kilometers, and they'd sort of just they'd speak for 5 or 10 minutes and bring up some statistics. And even as a man, and you see it and you hear about it, them just going into a little bit more depth. Even we were taking a step back, like, holy shit. This is crazy. But I sort of think it speaks. It probably speaks to that topic of, like you said before, the loneliness epidemic, and again, young men feeling lost, feeling like they're spinning their wheels. Where do I go? What do I do? Where do I fit in? There's a lot of work to be done in that space. But this the topic that we sort of speak on today, I sort of see, probably the spiritual side of things or the holistic side of things, where maybe mental health was, 10 to 15 years ago, it was very much, well, go and see someone and talk about it. Well, man, I would probably argue that that was geared a little bit more towards, the women in society, whereas, men are, like I said before, inherently very different. It's not always the case that they want to go and sit there and chat about it. It could be, two mates getting together at the pub having a beer, and then sort of, one eventually sort of starts to open up a little bit, or it's, in the gym, going and doing a workout with a mate, and then again that conversation started there. So I think men really struggle with that initial conversation, and it's finding that activity or whatever it is that you can do, to sort of just spark that chatter. And I see it a lot in the gym, and like I spoke on before as well, it's, people aren't going to naturally just come to you and tell you their life story. The gym and them being vulnerable, and being challenged, it sort of creates this really amazing relationship where that barrier starts to, slowly get knocked down, and then they open up and they feel, a million times better for it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Communication is so important. And I always say that men and women, we don't talk the same. It's like algebra, and like it's different. Yeah. And women, we tend to have more friendships, that we do have those gas bagging spaces. We love to like check in with each other. And I think with men, though, you do have this amazing, intuitive, empathic space, but nobody has said you can use it. Like, it's like, you can say, I feel you're just a bit off today, mate.
Yeah.
Is everything okay? And they'd be like, what are you, feelings? Like, this is like, what?
Yeah.
And I think it could be very much an Australian cultural thing, because there's a wonderful holistic healer here. He does a lot of breath work, Gillard, and he's from Israel. And of course, a lot of the men over there, he was saying to me, come to him in breath work, and which in the old days was called rebirth. So we used to, in the 80s, it was rebirthing, where you just swamp your lungs with a lot of oxygen, and it releases all this kind of trauma energy as well as healing energy at the same time. It's an amazing space. And he was saying, like in Israel, it was very rare to have a woman in the room. He came to Australia, he rarely gets a male in the room.
Oh, there you go. That's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. It's on, and when I'm talking to these tradies, and they're like, oh, I'm so fascinated with this stuff, and I'm like, do you tell the mates on the work site? And he's like, oh, don't want them to think I'm like that. And I feel like, well, say, hey, I went to a clairvoyant, and she, she talked to me about, spiritual things, and, why, looked at my palms, and then have that conversation, because I think someone's just waiting for the conversation to be sparked.
That's it. I think, there's so many different aspects to this conversation in itself, but it doesn't get spoken about. It really doesn't. I think it's, if you're having a conversation with a mate, or, like you say, the blokes on the work side, or, a few of the boys after a game having a beer in the sheds, in the change rooms after a game of footy and whatnot. I don't think it's been spoken about enough. I still see, or I still hear, and I think a lot of guys still see, this space as, let's sit around in a circle in front of a fire and hold hands. It couldn't be further from the truth, as we all know. But I think, again, it starts at the top. Like when I was sort of diving into this space, I was really lucky to sort of discover a few, for lack of better words, real blokey blokes, There's an astrologer that I bloody love to listen to, and you'd expect to see him down the pub. He's got a relatively scruffy beard, and he speaks like a bloke, he acts like a bloke, and but he has these conversations, and it's like, it's sort of confronting initially, because you're like, they can look like this and be this individual, but they can still be open enough to having these conversations. And I think that's sort of, where it starts. I don't think, like we talked about, men and females they're so different in so many different ways. So I think having a few of those key people at the top that men can sort of look to, and I think that makes a massive difference. And it did for me when I first, started diving in.
Yeah. And why did you come to me for a reading? Was it just out of curiosity?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. I think when we've gone through tarot cards before, yeah, I remember you saying to me once, you're always interested in it, and I was. I suppose I thought this question was going to come up today, and I thought about it a little bit. I sort of it was pretty unique, I guess, reflecting back on it. So I was pretty lucky as a kid. So my old man and his side of the family, your typical blue collar, pretty hard nosed, like head down, bum up. Typical blue collar individuals. And then mum's side of the family, sort of they're more sort of soft spoken and empathetic individuals. But what I found really interesting reflecting back, it was the blue collar side of the family that was so open to these conversations. Like I remember going to Nan and Pop's house and with dad, and like we'd just be openly they'd just openly be having these conversations. And again, these big burly men and tough as nails, like just openly talking about this stuff. Whereas mum's side, they probably weren't open to it as much. So I think that all subconsciously for a long, long time as a kid and being inquisitive naturally as a kid, that sort of sparked it. And there was always this interest, for forever. And sort of, I felt like I just wanted to go see her and just like do the thing.
Yeah. And
And
and when you look at people's palms and you look at people's numerology and you look, I mean, I don't do astrology. I love the star signs as well, but I don't generally bring that into my practice.
yeah,
People have a lot of aha moments. It's like,
exactly,
oh, okay, so because obviously my belief is very strong that before we're born, we have an itinerary of our life.
exactly.
And we pop that on our palms, we pop that in our numerology, in our astrology. And I just think it makes it clear for people to know that they're on the right track.
Exactly. Yeah.
And why shouldn't men be privy to that?
Exactly. Exactly. It's there's so many other areas that we focus on, but this one, like as you said, as you know, it gets neglected. But yeah.
And off topic, I found a lot of men, if there's hauntings will go for men. If they go into a home and the men go, oh, something's attached to me, like I'm getting, and usually there's a beacon. I mean, if an energy or spirit or an entity, whatever it is you want to call them, is coming at you, it's because you're a beacon.
Yeah.
And so there's so many men out there, I feel, that are open, probably to being more spiritually inclined, but don't have the training or the know-how or the go-to to be able to deal with these energies. And I mean, if you were to ask a lot of, I think it could be the Australian Indigenous, the First Nations, they say that energies can attach, and when that energy is cleared, their mental health is gone. So, and a lot of cultures do believe that it's not mental health, actually. It's energies, it's negative energies attaching to you, and you're needing to get rid of those energies.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something I'd love to throw myself more into, about researching that space.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
that's just on that, Joe. Do you find men, is there a difference, I guess, between, sort of when we speak of sort of being intuitive between males and females? Females, I would imagine, are a little bit more open to it naturally, not so closed off. Did you find it sort of same, or do you find a lot more females are probably more intuitive? Because I know we talk about the womb and pregnancy and creation of life and stuff like that.
Yeah, and which I love. Like, I love being a female. I just love it. And with all of this kind of new identity and fluid building with genders and things, I still think men need to be with men, and I think women need to be with women.
Absolutely.
But when it comes to intuition, I cannot see a difference.
Yeah, wow.
I think, in fact, men might be more intuitive, and I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for that. But I do. I think men, imagine as a hunter, let's go back to the time where you're hunting.
Of
If
course.
you don't know your surroundings, you're not just facing like a little deer, you're facing a predator.
Mm.
And you've got to have your intuition spot on, because otherwise you're going to be the apex predator for so long until you're
Yeah.
not.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think we've dulled that intuition for men. I think men are really in tune to it, absolutely,
They are. Of
but maybe don't know how to put it into words.
course. Yeah.
Yeah, but that gut feeling,
Yeah.
like, I think we all have it. And I keep saying, like I've said to you so many times, can you please step up? Please step up into this spiritual realm, because it's so important, because I can only do so much in my life
Yeah.
where I can reach people. But if I can, like, encourage men who have the ability to step up, it's going to benefit all men. And as you said, like, a lot of men don't want to be sitting around the fire pit holding hands and talking about feelings.
Yeah.
But, like, what is connection for men? Like, I don't know. What is it? Like,
Yeah, I think largely, I think I talked about it before, but it's you know, it's the mate over it, it's funny, but in front of the fire pit having a beer,
yeah,
chatting a bit of smack, and that leads from
yeah,
one thing to the next to the next, it happens so often. Like, I had a mate over the other night, and we're having a beer around the fire pit, and just talking about one thing to the next to the next, and then he started talking about some pretty full on stuff that he had to deal with in his time in the in the army. Like, he's an ex-army vet of all people. But it's just that, just starting that conversation,
mm,
it can be, building that connection through, a year of footy together and stuff like that. Some of the best mates that I've still got to this day, played footy with for a long time, or even not that long, cricket, whatever it is. But I think men have got to go and throw themselves into those activities, I think, where they can be surrounded by other men. That's always step one. And then you find your people. I think it's inside of that, it's making sure that you're still being authentically you as well. And naturally from that, so many you'll find your person.
it's funny too, talking about finding your person. My son and I were talking about me interviewing you today, and he was saying, for like, because he's a gamer, so a
Yep.
lot of his interaction is online.
Yep.
And he was saying what he thinks is a major problem for men online who aren't. I mean, he also goes to the gym and he does bouldering, but a lot of people that just are online and that's the only connection they have in the world. He said the problem is that you're finding your people, but your algorithm makes sure that that's where you stay. He said it's like a cult. So if you've got it, he said, like a some sort of bigotry, or you have like this like manosphere energy, all you get fed is more of that rhetoric that is the true way to be as a male. He said, and this is where algorithms are so dangerous and a cult like, or he said cult like. It's like you're not getting any other opinions coming in to argue the point. And yeah, and I think too, if you're 13, which is of course like the Andrew Tates in the world had targeted these young boys,
Yep. Yep.
um, like, it's pretty dangerous.
It is, and to flip it on its head, where he talks about gamers being, in their space, and that's all they know and that's all they see. It's I see it a lot in the gym. There's guys who you would look at, without knowing them, you'd look at them and they look amazing and they're as fit as a human can possibly be. And they excel in the gym, and every other area of their life is a complete shit show. I think it's so important to be aware of that, number one. One simple thing that I like to do with my own algorithm, it's be very mindful of sort of who you follow and connect with online. So, as an example, if I go through my follower list, there's so many people that sit at in so many different sort of niches or industries and things like that as well. And you're getting all these different perspectives, and that sort of, to me, is extremely important. But I think it's just, you know, that having the awareness, having the understanding that, if if the gym's your thing, which is, great, it's been great for me too. But if that's all you're ever seeing, all you're ever hearing, I think often what gets shoved down, especially young males' throats when it comes to gym and gym content is, grind, hustle, just and it's sort of the trap that I fell into, which is probably where I sort of started and kind of come out the other side. And I thought, well, shit, like I've only been sitting in this lane. There's another 15 lanes to the left and to the right that I haven't looked at or discovered. It's kind of, it's time to start exploring stuff because, yeah, we've got to take like I talk with clients all the time. We've got to take a holistic approach on this stuff. There's no point being the richest or the healthiest individual if you're miserable, and your husband or wife, you don't get along with them.
Yeah.
There's all this stuff, and that's why it's so important to not just eyes in one place.
Well, this is one thing too, because last few years I was at the gym to lose weight. I definitely don't need it for mental health because I use other avenues. I was definitely one of those people like headphones in. I'm here for an hour to zone out. For me, it was a meditative space. I didn't want to chat. But then on the flip side, I wish it'd been more of a social event gym. Yep. Where, they had Christmas parties and because I wanted to get to know these people that were coming into the gym. But at the time I was at the gym, I just wanted, but then I'd see other people just in there talking the whole hour.
Yeah.
And not even actually doing anything.
Yep. Yeah.
And also, like for someone like me, I go straight to the equipment, the treadmill. But there was always that, like the serious gym person. That's where the weights are.
Yeah.
And I was always like, oh, I don't go in that space. That's the real gym people. Like, because no one really taught me how to use anything, I always felt like it was the forbidden space as well. Cool. I didn't want to look like someone who didn't know what they were doing at my age. But also a lot of people don't go to the gym because they don't want to, it's terrifying to walk into a gym. And then, of course, most people that are there 5 days a week, they look amazing. And people that are going to the gym for the first time, we're not feeling confident. We're there to get our bodies into shape. And I feel like that's a huge barrier to actually walking in.
Yeah, yeah. Look, the first thing I'd say to that is the person that looks amazing and looks like they've got their shit together and know exactly what they're doing started exactly where everyone else did. There was a point in time where they didn't know how to use any of the equipment. They were new to the gym. They might have not have looked as good as what they do now or seem as confident. So that's always the first thing. That sort of provides a little bit of peace of mind. Often they can, some of the scariest looking individuals too, the big burly men, and they're tough and they'll groan, halfway through their set and stuff like that. They're some of the biggest teddy bears I've ever met. So that's always great too when you get to know the individual. But I think that's why we've seen the rise of group training, especially the way that it's typically structured. There's sort of there's so many different factors. There's a 45-minute block where it's head down, bum up, let's train. But, people typically, before a class, they'll get there 15, 20 minutes early. They'll have a chat with some other class participants. They'll stick around for another 10 or 15 minutes after and have that conversation. And a lot of the group training stuff, there's those weekend events or stuff like that, or collaborations with other businesses, where they might be going and doing like a cold plunge or a recovery day and stuff like that too. So there's all that really, really cool stuff. But even in itself, there's a barrier, which I understand when it comes to group training for a lot of people.
And I think we have to mention too, for a lot of people, they'll mix with kind of religion. And this is where I think we were very religious cultures back in the day, and religion does have structures, and it does have like, this is what a man does, this is what a female does. As much as I don't agree with it all, it did give the communities structures
Yep.
To live by, and we don't have those structures, particularly in Australia now. I mean, I did a little bit of religious studies when I was at primary school, and Mum let me go to Sunday school, and I got kicked out because I asked too many questions. But I was like really, I was enthralled. I wanted to know a million things, and apparently that's a troublemaker. But like, I always found, I mean, as I've said to so many people, the reason I moved towards witchcraft was because it was welcoming to the feminine energy. I felt that it had a place for me, and it had a positive place for me, and a place where I was never going to be what my mum was in her role. We were different generations. And actually, I was just talking to a girlfriend yesterday about the generations now. We have like Generation X, we have the millennials, we have all the Generation Z. And what we found, because she's in management,
Yep.
and she said that she has to be trained to deal with each generation, because each generation sees so differently the way we conduct ourselves.
Yeah, of course, that makes sense.
So
Yep.
she said, like, she's got to be really careful, because she could talk to Generation X, which is me, and she could use a tone, and I'm not going to be offended by it.
Yep.
But the new generation's going to, that's bullying.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and then I thought, well, actually, let's expand on that, because when I went to work, it didn't matter what generation we were. You moved into that workspace as it had always been. Like, we don't care if you have mental health issues. We didn't care, like, you don't know what you're doing. You just went in and you did your job and shut up about it. Now, we have HR, we have all these different structures in place. And I thought to myself, how do you deal with, say, the generational aspects of it? Or do you even see it?
In the, like, primarily just in the gym space?
Yeah.
Yeah, look, they're so different. What I'd probably say is it's people probably don't realize this. There's not a lot of the not a lot of the a lot of the younger generation, yes, are going to the gym. Not a lot of them are, necessarily engaging in, personal training and stuff like that. So that's something to keep in mind. But chatting to different generations in the gym, no two conversations are the same. Ideals are very different. Yeah, there's so many differences. But that's from client to client as well. I could have 3 clients, all male, aged 50, and every one of them could still be very, very different. But yes, from generation to generation, the types of conversations that you're having are very different. And probably stuff that we talk about today, the younger generation, a lot of them probably aren't quite ready to have this conversation, if that makes sense. So I've always naturally probably connected with people a little bit older than myself, it's just how it's always sort of been.
Yeah.
And have sort of those higher level, probably deeper conversations. That's what I enjoy, rather than what I call surface level shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very, very different, to sum it up. Yes.
Yeah. So for you in the future,
Yeah.
where do you think your PT coaching will go?
Yeah, that's something that I've been pondering for a little while, actually. It will, what I can comfortably say, I won't always be on the floor just, teaching exercise, because I see so much of a gap and so much more potential in this space that needs to be, attacked head on, in my opinion. It'll probably be spending a little bit of time and talking to, a few mentors and a few people that I sort of idolize as to how to bring it all together. I've got a good crop of mentors around me that I can have these conversations and pick an idea here and there. So that'll be the start. What exactly that looks like at the end point, I'm not too sure. I think something like a podcast is great, for the simple fact that you can bring on someone that is head of health and fitness. You can bring on, a medium, an astrologer. Then you can bring on someone like a Mark Boris, as as tough businessmen as they get. So long term, I could see something like that evolving. Um, just for the simple fact that I think conversation and opening up, collective awareness to all these different things is extremely important. And I think especially, even in that space, it seems like every second person is starting a podcast, but they're very niched in. So something to allow open conversation, create that little bit of awareness and get people thinking is something that, I've sort of thought quite a bit about as to when that'll take off. I'm not too sure, but I think that is sort of the path that I'd like to go down. But there's so many different things that I want to do. But yeah, that's one of the many ideas that are floating around at the moment. So.
Yeah. And in your own life, what do you do for your well-being?
Depends. It really depends. One week I might do something to, sort of de-stress. The other week I might do something totally different. I, as an example, over the weekend, I spent a bit of time, with a couple of mates. We went and had a few beers and whatnot. But then the next weekend, it's, going somewhere with Chelsea and stuff like that as well. There's so many different things. Training and nutrition is always extremely important. I think I heard, out of all people, Jim Carrey spoke on it. If you get to understand Jim Carrey a little bit more and his story and struggles with mental health and things like that, he says unless you're exercising, you're eating well, you're getting sunlight, things like that, I don't think you can necessarily say you have a mental health disorder until you're ticking all those boxes, which is probably a bit in some people's face. But I think it also is a necessary conversation with some people to be had. But it just depends. That evolves in itself.
Does. And I find, a lot of people, as you're saying, that they could be at the gym and they look amazing, but they're not, everything else is just rubbish at home. But I always see people that are doing like 2 to 3 hours a day at the gym. I'm like, that's an addiction.
It can very much end up like that. Body dysmorphia is a term that's getting thrown around a lot these days. And I think, again, with social media, it's positive to a point. Everyone that you see in the health and fitness space is shredded, looks $1,000,000, but typically what they don't tell you is the copious amounts of heads they're running to look that way. And that's not saying that all individuals that look amazing are, on cliche term steroids, if that makes sense, because a lot of people aren't. A lot of people look great, without any of that sort of stuff. It just comes back to training and nutrition and sleep and all those other things as well. But yeah, it's very it's very interesting.
Because one of my philosophies, I mean, my sister, she'll be so crazy if I say nearly 60, but the truth is she is.
Yep.
And she's running marathons, she's swimming, she's the fittest she's ever been. Awesome. And she loves it. And she's very dedicated type of fit. Like I was always like, all over the place, but she's always been very consistent. She loves a goal. And she's, I say, you've got to go to the Olympics because you're just so fast now. When it comes to swimming, she's insane.
Yeah.
And I love that she lives for the gym. But for me, I like to be as healthy as I need for my lifestyle.
Exactly. And that's the thing too. I do think that it gets shoved down a lot of people's throats that they need to have an 8-pack and they need to be able to deadlift 300 kilo, stuff like that. For a lot of individuals I work with as well as clients, it's they've got kids, maybe as an example 3 and 5 years old. They don't feel like they can necessarily run around the playground with them and keep up. So, there's a bit of weight loss and just improve fitness. And that's their goal and that's all they want to achieve it. And that's okay. And that's the thing that's not spoken about often enough.
And also with the holistic approach, I mean, a lot of people don't realize that yoga and meditation were birthed together. And so yoga was really to get the body so flexible and so strong and so healthy so that you could actually go into a very deep meditation space and remain there seated. So it's like all these kind of Eastern philosophies have always known that holistic is the only way to go. I mean, you look at Tai Chi, and all the so China and places that have constantly there, and these elderly people where we're putting them into homes are out every morning at 6 o'clock doing their Tai Chi, moving their energy, and they're living healthier and a lot older than what we are.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, I could go on about this. I could go on about this one for days, but why is it, anyone typically over the age of 80 here in Australia or, Western world is getting thrown in a home, and it's a bit grim, but left there to die, if you know what I mean. Like,
Yeah.
and then, you look at, like you say, you look at China and places like that, mid-90s, living independently, fit, healthy. There's so much that we can learn from Eastern countries that we just I have this
Yeah,
conversation.
and I agree with you absolutely. I think diet and nutrition is the utmost important out of, because I mean I see it as like a car. You put the good stuff into the car, the good petrol, it does last longer, it runs better. But most of us, we chuck in the 91, that'll do,
Yeah.
and off we go.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. And look, when I talk about prioritization of health, it's sort of people often put training on a pedestal. And what I actually say to people a lot of the time, like it starts with sleep. So sleep is at the top, like, and then it's nutrition, and then it's training. And I'll live by that philosophy until the day I die. I think a lot of people have a lot of this a little bit back to front as well. And
I agree with you with sleep, because when I'm teaching psychic ability and stuff like that, the most important is the third eye energy. And so when you're looking at becoming more psychic or developing your intuition, unfortunately, you have to live well. And it doesn't mean you can't have your fun spaces. Everyone knows I love a shardy. Do you know I love a good carny? And but I make sure that what I do put into my body is, I always say 80-20.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
80-20, like, mostly good with a few bit of naughties there as well. I mean, I don't want to miss that cream puff occasionally, but you don't want a cream puff every week, So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and with the whole thing with ADHD and all these like titles now that we have, I mean, I know some schools are now teaching mindfulness and meditation. And I feel like it's always just about getting into that headspace, isn't it? So when you get to the gym, I mean, I see a lot of movies where they use visualization, which I absolutely love visualization. It's like, I know with, I'm going to forget her name, and she's Australian treasure. Who's our First Nations runner? Oh my God.
Kathy.
Yes, Kathy Freeman. Thank
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
so
Sorry.
much.
Yeah.
And before she won that a famous race of hers, she had to visualize exactly how she was going to run that, and then all she had to do was execute it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
for a lot of people who don't understand mindfulness, it's really visualization. It's
Absolutely.
just, and also mindfulness is just coming back into center. And I think a lot of holistic energy is just coming back into center, as above, so below. Like, it's great to work on the physique, but we've got to also work on, I mean, look, my son, he so desperately wants the answers. He wants to see the truth. And I say, you just have to feel it and believe it. And that's unfortunately all I can really give him. Is, I mean, even Einstein had, the long dark night of the soul, where, his scientific brain said, I just can't not feel that there's, well, he said God, but there's a divine presence in all of us. And I think this is where we need to deep dive, particularly in areas of well-being, which is what you teach. The divine self is so important.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's yeah, just touching on what your son spoke about as well. That's where I came into it at the start. You so desperately want to know everything of everything, and unfortunately, it's just you're never going to win that game. So you've got to be comfortable with the unknown. And I think Often it takes a little while to understand, but when you get there, it brings a lot of peace at the same time too.
Well, it does. It brings peace, and for anyone who's watching today, I don't want to come across as like anti-religion, because I think I had a look statistically, and I think some churches are really growing. I think the ones that have adjusted to modern day thinking, they're doing really, really well. And also asked ChatGPT, I was like, how is like young males and spirituality going? And it came back, it said it's happening quietly but strongly.
Yep, yep, yep. Yeah, I was listening to, oh geez, I'm not sure who it was, whether it was who was speaking on this the other day, whether it was like a Jordan Peterson or a Chris Williamson, or one of the big name podcasters and stuff. But they were talking about young men have almost come full circle and are now coming back to religion and things in and around that. So that's been really interesting. They're questioning more, which I think is step one.
Yeah, and psychology, particularly with say Jordan Peterson, he's coming in from a very scientific psychologically space, but then he's also done some amazing stuff on the psychology of the Bible.
Exactly.
Yeah, and brought that together, and I thought, oh wow, that's a really interesting take on that.
100%.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I think sometimes young men fall into the trap of I have to attach myself to X or Y or Z. But I think, it's been able to listen to that, take a portion of that, and listen to the next portion, take a portion of that. And I think there's a really good book. I'm sure a lot of people have either read it or heard of it. It's called Atomic Habits by James Clear. And he takes a variety of different individuals from so many different walks of life. He takes he takes snippets from religion, but then he also talks about things as far as nihilism and everything in between, and he molds it to suit him and his authentic self at the end of the day. And I think that is awesome.
And I love that. And that comes down to research. It comes down to having uncomfortable conversations. It comes down to putting yourself, like opening every door. I mean, I think the biggest problem now is that even though we're saying we want to be fluid, we're now probably more than ever labeling than we ever have before. And this is part of my podcast now, is to show like, oh yeah, so the first person I interviewed, she's a real estate agent, and we think, oh, that's a title, but she's also feng shui. And then it's like, oh, a hairdresser, but she's also holistic. And then a PT coach in the gym and the males, but you're also like highly spiritual. So I'm trying to break some of those confines that we're putting around people, and people. I mean, I'm a Scorpio. I've evolved so many times. Every decade, someone would know me for something different.
Yep.
But way in the day, I was Red Hot music girl, and then I was like the belly dancer girl, and now I'm like Joe from Red Room. And it's like, yeah, because people evolve, and we need to evolve.
Absolutely.
And that's why I get a little bit, I'm always a bit cautious about dogma. Anywhere where someone says this is how it is, and that's how it's got to be, I find that so limiting. And that's what I loved about your birthday with those 3 zeros. You're here to remold the future. You're here to grab those zeros and turn them into creation. And so I 100% believe that you chose your birthday absolutely for those reasons.
Yeah.
And I had to laugh, once again, another story, because I've always got a million stories. I had a wild night in the bush one night with a bunch of bushmen. Now, I don't want anyone to go too far. It was just drinking. And it's not long before they have a few drinks, and then they're like, so what's this whole like stuff that you do? And I said, look, I'm happy to read everyone's palms, which is one of my golden rules not to do while drinking, but we'd had enough for me not to be thinking about that. And so I went around doing a really quick little thing, and anyway, I got to this one guy, and he'd sat there all night kind of very quiet. And I said to him on his heartline, I said, you've got a really major event that happened on your heartline where there's major grief here. And not to go into his story, but it broke him because nobody had spoken to him about this tragic event, and sobbed.
Yeah, wow.
And I kind of went, I've killed the atmosphere, because we're having a really good time before that. And what I loved was these bushmen just came in at him and supported him while he sobbed his heart out. And I thought, wow, I mean, in the morning, we're all going to have shocking headaches and we're going to wish we hadn't drunk so much. But I believe that moment was meant to happen, because I think it was like 20 something years, no one had ever spoken to him about this event.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's like, there's so much, I think spirituality allows people to heal wounds that just lifting a weight can't fix.
Exactly. And these are so many conversations that I have with clients, and you know, that's one individual, but these, you know, the people that I talk to about this stuff, it's the same positive effect on them. Like, I don't think I've ever come across anyone who walks away feeling shit or feeling not as good as they walked in. And I think that's probably a commonality that we both strive for in our professions.
Yeah. And just to feel lighter. I know my gym, I mean, for me, I'm a doof girl. I used to love going to raves.
Yeah.
And I'm not in there with inspirational music going on. I am in there with like, like, for me, I've got this nightclub going on, and I just love it so much because I get the vibe and the energy from it. But I'd love to have a little sticky beak at what everyone's listening to during their session.
You'd be surprised. There's a bit of a reel going around at the moment, and it's where, like, again, this, like, it's these little things, but they're so good for just breaking stereotypes. They're in a gym setting, and there's one massive big burly man, like just a tank of a lad, and one really small petite woman. Anyway, they end up bumping into each other, and they both had their AirPods in. One AirPod falls out, and they get mixed up, and she picks his up, and I think he's listening to like some Britney Spears or something, and he picks hers up and puts it in his ear, and I think she's listening to, you know, some sort of screamo or something.
Yes,
but it's those little things that just just break down. But look, I think, you know, enough of that. You know, seeing that stuff day to day in your news feed can be really positive from a long term trajectory.
So to wrap up our conversation, how can people find you?
Look, Instagram is probably the easiest way. If they just search Kyle McGiveron, there'll be a little bit more coming within sort of the next 6 months. A little bit more of a solidified brand. We're just going through that at the moment with the branding agency, which is really exciting.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Yeah. So that'll be really, really cool. We'll start to push that out there when that is all sort of finalized at the moment. But I think the brand in itself will evolve a lot over time, and especially in that short to medium term, which is really exciting for me. Yeah.
And what I love is that you found your passion, and you're doing your passion, and then the passion evolves, and now you're moving into that in service. And a lot of people don't understand what in service means. It's like, I'm in a position now where I can be in service to you, and it's not servitude, which people tend to get a little bit confused with. It's not like I'm working the grind and I'm at you're actually like, I have something of worth, and now I can share it with you. And that's when you know you're in a higher frequency, when you can do that. And you're now been in the industry long enough to be able to create your own industry within the industry, which I find really exciting.
It is. No one's really bridging that gap all that much, or to the extent that's required. So there's a massive gap in the industry that hopefully we can target. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for giving me the time. I know you're a busy person.
You. Yeah, that was awesome.
And I really appreciate everything that you do. And let's hope that you get these conversations rolling, because now, I mean, I found it very brave of you to come on, because it's like, what will people say, that now they know he's spiritual, and but this is going to be rolling on now.
Yeah, well, hopefully, if it helps one person, like one young male out there that maybe is, there's a little bit of curiosity in the back of his mind, and you can sort of take that next step. But yeah, if there's anything I can say to people, and I think the world would be filled with a lot more love if people just authentic to them, and
Yeah. And also, you're not promising anyone, like, I can fix your mental health, I could do this, but what you are allowing people to do is to experience holistic well-being.
yeah,
And then therefore help them to go. Like, as a Reiki practitioner, I'm not the magical one. I'm just the conduit.
yep,
And so you're the conduit now to be able to reach the masses and teach them how to make their life more holistic. And I love that, I don't love that it's 2026 that we're having these conversations,
yeah,
because for me, I grew up in this kind of energy and it disappeared somewhere in the 90s.
yep,
And now we're all back on that kind of wavelength again. But I think it's purely because the babies that were born, like the 2000 onwards,
yep,
you're now the spokespeople.
yeah, yep.
Yeah, and yeah, so it's changing, and I don't mind the fact that we are generationally different. I actually find it very humorous.
I think
Oh,
it's great in itself, like there's some amazing mentors that I have that are mid 60s and 70 years of age, that I met through the gym. There's people
yeah.
younger than me that I consider, mentors in certain
Oh,
areas.
yeah.
So there's every generation, like we talked about, they're having different conversations, but they can bring something else
Yeah,
to the
absolutely.
table.
Yeah, absolutely. And even with the men's shed, that's
Yeah,
reaching out to those men who love to do tradey things as well. And
absolutely.
it's bringing back that idea that elderly people have worth
Yeah,
and they have wisdom.
yeah.
Not all of us, but there are some good ones out there that you do learn things throughout your life. And if you're aware of that process, then you get to share that with the younger generation. And I do. And as you said, you've got younger people that are inspirational. Some people are just born smart and
Yeah.
wise, and and so us oldies, we need to sit back occasionally and listen as well. Take that in. So, but thank you so much. So I'm just going to have to do this old school way because I am old school. So, and thank you. So I'm going to stop recording right now and saying goodbye to all the audience as well. And stop.